Now I would like to invite Bob Churlick, President of the World Bank.
Well, I want to start by thanking Prime Minister Gordon Brown and Kailash for putting together this tremendous event and this overall effort. As Kevin Rudd said, wherever you go in the issues of Millennium Development Goals, Gordon Brown is there adding innovation, sense of creativity, but also relentlessness. And as I listened to these presentations, I just couldn't help but think of the fact that, as a young man, I'm sure he also opened up his eyes for the first time in reading. And I remember when one of our first conversations, he talked about how Adam Smith was both the author of The Wealth of Nations and A Theory of Moral Sentiments. And so much of what he talks about is how he brings those two together. And I know that Prime Minister Rudd has been a good friend for some 15 years, will do the same. But I think the reason this education issue means so much to all of us is because you have somewhere in the back of your mind that day when you first wanted to learn to read, and you first had a sense of the world being opened up, and going to school and having it connect you to a whole larger sense of life. And it just is the most disturbing and shocking thing to think of children who don't have that opportunity. Just think of the lives that are just cut off, that are stunted, because they don't have the most basic aspects of what you and your children just come to take for granted. And that's what this effort is about. It's connected to the other things we're talking about here at the UN. I'm going off to an event for school feeding. Absolutely critical, because what we find is that when food prices go up as they have and nutrition goes down, the first kids that are taken out of schools by families are girls. They're the ones that lose out in that process. So at the World Bank, we definitely pledge to continue to help countries to achieve universal primary completion and quality education. And we've seen that you can make a difference. Some of these problems look so significant and so large, but it's important to keep in mind that just over the past 6 years, you've increased 40 million children getting into school. Now, that may just seem like a number, but think about 40 million lives that are changed because they now have an opportunity that they didn't have. The share of children completing primary school is up 10% to 74%. Not enough, but the efforts of people like you can make a tremendous difference. Cambodia went from 50% completion of primary education to 87% over the course of 5 years. But yet still fewer than half of the countries that are in the category that we call IDA, the International Development Assistance for those that are poorest, are not able to achieve the Millennium Development Goal in education. The majority of the countries in Africa are not on track. So at the World Bank, we're committing $1.5 billion for education per year in 2008 to 2009, working with the countries on their own programs. We're also the trustee of the FTI and the Catalytic Fund and the Education Program Development Fund, which has already pledged about another $1.4 billion. And as we go forward in getting kids into school, we have to keep in mind one other thing, and that is quality is just as important as numbers. Quality education is the true driver of economic growth. Results count. So we need to help countries get the tools, have teachers get the training, and help keep raising the bar so that more people can have the advantages that all of us have had in the room. To do that, there's a role for public international institutions, there's a role for governments, but there's also a critical role for the private sector. And that's one reason why this whole effort is one that I think is absolutely critical. Queen Rania here of Jordan, most people may not know there's more women that graduate now from universities than men in Jordan. But they can't get jobs. They can't get connected to the workforce. What does that do for the next generation? So whether it's the start in terms of school feeding and nutrition, whether it's the effort to get kids in school, improve the quality, and also is the private sector to help connect the education to jobs so people have a sense of building a future and they'll contribute to the next generation. Thank you very much.